Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session focuses on the growth and death of a language. I hope and expect that by the end of this session, you would be able to understand the concepts of the life of a language and the death of a language. Well, my dear students, I hope you already understand what do we mean by the birth of a language, which in fact is not something that happens at a particular time point, rather is a kind of a stage where it gets a particular shape and a form. And I also hope that you understand that each one of human languages is in itself a complex and versatile entity that keeps on changing and evolving and taking forms and shapes. My dear students, languages sometimes die as well. Usually they die from a competition that is given by some other language. What I mean by that is, when the speakers of a particular language stop using that particular language and adopt another language or increase the use of another language out of competition, that particular language fades out or dies. As an example, I would talk of Non, that is a Germanic language related to Old Norse. It was introduced to Orkney and Shetland by Viking settlers, and it was spoken there until the 18th century. However, the use of this language started declining from the 15th century gradually when Norway ceded the islands to Scotland and Scots was increasingly being used. When a language officially becomes extinct, this point is difficult to determine. We cannot say exactly at what time point a particular language is born. In the same way, it is difficult to say at what particular time point a language dies. So again, it is not a case of a time point. It is more like a stage in the life of a language. So, I would give the example of Cornish language. It is said about this language that it died out in 1777 when the last speaker of this language died. However, it is very interesting that a small number of speakers continued to use it, though sparingly and, very rarely, but the use continued. And by the middle of the 9th century, a revival started. So the point in discussion is that languages take birth, they grow, and after passing through different stages of their life, they die. But that is not the end of the story. Sometimes there is a rebirth. They are born again. So, this language, Cornish, it had a revival in the 20th century, and according to Ethnologue, a number of people now use it as their first language. So almost, 1,000 people are officially recognized to use it as their first language, and other 2,000 can also speak it fluently. It is very interesting that it is recognized now as one of the official languages of the United Kingdom and as a minority language within the European Union. So this is an interesting case of the revival or rebirth of a language. Languages sometimes die in another way. And what is that other way? I would give the example of classic Latin example. For example, the classical Latin language that was spoken by Julius Caesar does not exist anymore. In the same way, we do not find classical Greek language. Also, old Icelandic language that was spoken by the heroes of Norse sagas, it is not found anymore. However, the death of all these three languages that I have given examples of does not mean that these languages do not exist. They are dead in one way, yet they are alive in another way. And what is that way? They have changed into something else. People still speak Greek as a living language, and this language is largely used, in a changed form spoken in the Athens of Pericles. The people who live in Rome today, they also, they have developed through a process, a continuous change in the language, and the language that now they speak, though is different from the language that was spoken by Julius Caesar, the language in some other way still exists. So, though modern Italian developed out of the everyday language of the ancient Roman marketplace and of the common soldiery, rather than out of the upper class literary Latin that Caesar, used. As far as the example of Icelandic language is concerned, the people who live in Iceland today, they speak a language that has developed directly out of the language of the great Icelandic sagas of the Middle Ages. So, that particular form of the classical form of language dies, it fades away, but a new form that is used by masses, emerges out of that. Overall, what I would like to say is, languages take birth, they live, they grow, they die, and very interestingly, sometimes they take a rebirth.